1. She watered a fake plant. I'm Jake Evans, in my early 30s, a department director at a tech company in Seattle. It's not a huge title, but I manage a team of over a dozen people, and I'm worked to the bone every single day. My last assistant left to become a stay-at-home wife after marrying a software engineer. HR found me a new one, Nina Chun. Her resume was flawless. Top university, plenty of relevant experience. She looked like the sharp, capable type. On the day of the interview, she wore a tasteful business suit and light makeup. She spoke softly, a faint smile always on her lips. I threw a few technical questions at her, and she answered every one perfectly. I was impressed. She seemed like a good fit, low maintenance at the very least. I made the call on the spot and told her to start the next day. The following morning, Nina arrived right on time, carrying a cardboard box with her personal effects. The most conspicuous item was a lush green Dieffenbachia, or dumb-cane. Its leaves were broad and glossy, clearly well cared for. She placed the pot on the floor against the wall, just outside my office door. I was pleased. I thought it showed initiative, adding a touch of green to the office. I even walked over to admire it. That's a beautiful plant. Nina just smiled back a little shyly. I'm glad you like it, Jake. Then she got to work, organizing files, learning procedures, coordinating with the team. By the end of the day, she was operating with a smoothness that was anything but new. I was even more satisfied, thinking HR had finally gotten something right. But the next morning, I noticed something was off. When I got to the office, Nina was already there. She was holding a small spray bottle, meticulously misting the leaves of the dumb cane. After that, she picked up a small watering can and poured a little water into the pot. Only after completing this ritual did she return to her desk to start her day. I didn't think much of it. A love for plants is a good thing, very calming. But this went on for 3 straight days. On the 4th day, my curiosity got the better of me. I was walking back from a morning meeting, and as I passed the plant, I instinctively reached out and touched a leaf. It was hard, cold. It had the distinct texture of plastic. I gave a squeeze. Shit, it was a fake plant. I just stood there, stunned, staring at this glossy, plastic dumb cane, my brain struggling to catch up. An executive assistant who comes in every single morning to water a fake plant. What the hell kind of performance art was this? I went back into my office. Nina brought me a freshly brewed coffee. I looked at her and asked tentatively, Nina, that plant by the door, did you bring it from home? She nodded, flashing that signature gentle, harmless smile. I did, Jake. Have you had it long? A few years, yes. I took a sip of coffee. The bitter taste felt unusually complex. I decided to just come out with it. So, you know it's fake, right? Nina blinked, as if my question was the strange part. Then she nodded again, her tone earnest. Of course. Then why do you water it every day? I finally asked the question that had been bugging me for days. Nina's smile widened, her eyes curving into crescents. She said, it's about the ritual, Jake. The ritual? Right. I had to admit I was getting old. I didn't really get the younger generation. Maybe this was just her way of dealing with workplace stress. I didn't say anything else, just wave her out of my office. But from that day on, my perception of Nina carried a new, indefinable quality. Her work remained impeccable. My schedule was managed down to the minute. My meeting notes were clearer than the meetings themselves, and she even figured out my coffee habits, ordering a latte for me moments before I'd even think of getting one myself. Aside from her unwavering daily ritual of watering that fake plant, she was the perfect assistant. After a while, I got used to it. I even found a certain stress relief in watching her tend to a piece of plastic every morning. It wasn't until the prince was transferred to our department that I realized Nina's strangeness might be more than just a ritual. 2. The prince's cactus. The prince was the nephew of the company's VP, a kid named Leo. The story was he'd just gotten back from studying abroad and was here to experience corporate life. The CEO himself had called me and asked me to look after him. I knew what look after him meant. It meant I had to put him on a pedestal, make sure he didn't cause any trouble, and expect absolutely nothing from him. Leo was assigned to my department with the title of Project Coordinator. On his first day, he pulled up in a flashy red sports car and parked it in the no parking zone right in front of the building. He was handsome in a slick sort of way, with perfectly gelled hair and enough cologne to knock out a horse. He strolled into the office, ignored me completely, and did a full lap before picking a desk by the window. He complained about the desk and had facilities replace it immediately. Then, from his Louis Vuitton messenger bag, he pulled out a cactus. The cactus looked just like him, spiky and aggressive. He slammed it down on his new desk, declaring his territory. The entire department watched him, silent. As the director, I had to be the one to break the ice. "Leo, right? Welcome to the team." He glanced at me sideways and grunted an which I guess was his version of a greeting. Fine. I could deal with it. In the days that followed, Leo showed us exactly what it meant to be a toxic employee. He'd show up right on time and be the first one out the door. He'd play on his phone during meetings and treat discussions like background noise. The simplest tasks I gave him would come back riddled with errors, wrong formatting, missing data, you name it. When you called him on it, he'd act like you were the one with the problem. "Hey, it's close enough, right? Why get so hung up on the details?" I wanted to strangle him, but I'd think of the VP and force my anger down. Everyone in the department complained about him behind his back, but no one dared cross him to his face. Only Nina seemed completely unfazed. She had zero interaction with him. If Leo asked for a file, she'd email it without a single word in the body. If he tried to get her to make him coffee, she'd point to the break room and say, "The machine's over there. Help yourself." Leo would get furious, but there was nothing he could do. Nina's work was flawless, and she was my assistant. One afternoon, I was pulling my hair out over a project proposal. The data from Leo's section was, you guessed it, wrong again. I called him into my office and patiently explained the errors. He just stood there, slouched and bored, the information going in one ear and out the other. My temper flared. "Leo, are you even listening to me? This data is due tomorrow. If it's wrong, there will be consequences." He just shrugged, completely unconcerned. "Relax, Jake. It's not a big deal. My uncle's the VP. Who's going to say anything to me?" His words were like a punch to the gut. I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay calm. Losing it won't help. I pointed to the door. "Get out. I'll fix it myself." He looked relieved and bolted. I slumped into my chair, my temples throbbing with anger. Nina came in with a glass of warm water and placed it gently on my desk. "Take it easy, Jake." I took a sip, the warmth calming me slightly. I looked up at her. She was gazing out the window toward Leo's desk. Then she said something completely out of the blue. "Jake, from now on, you should stay away from the cactus on Leo's desk." I was baffled. "What?" She turned back to me, her expression placid. "This morning, one of its spines broke off." "A broken spine? What kind of reason was that?" I had to laugh. "Nina, have you been reading too many fantasy novels?" She didn't explain, just repeated herself. "Just in case, it's better to keep your distance." She turned and left my office. I didn't take her seriously. I figured it was just her weird way of trying to make me feel better. The next day was the project review meeting. The CEO and several VPs would be there. I had stayed up half the night fixing Leo's data and putting it into the presentation. The meeting started. I went up to the podium and began my presentation. Halfway through, the director of finance, who was in charge of auditing the data, suddenly raised an objection. He pointed to one of the core figures on the screen and said it didn't match the numbers his department had on file. My stomach dropped. That was impossible. I had triple-checked that number. Unless I whipped my head around to look at Leo, who was sitting in the corner, playing on his phone. He felt my gaze and looked up, a smug grin spreading across his face. I understood instantly. The bastard had sabotaged the raw data he'd given me in the first place. I had only fixed the surface-level errors he'd faked. The real landmine was buried deeper. The CEO's face darkened. The VPs started whispering to each other. I stood at the podium, a cold sweat trickling down my spine. I was going to have to take the fall for this. Just then, Nina, who had been sitting beside me, abruptly stood up. She was holding a flash drive. "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt." She walked over to the projector and plugged it in. Instantly, a file popped up on the screen. The title read, Project XX Raw Data Backup and Anomaly Fluctuation Analysis. Inside was the completely correct data, along with a detailed analysis report. The report clearly pointed out the traces of manual alteration in the original data, even timestamping the exact moment the changes were made. And that timestamp just happened to be during Leo's work hours. The room erupted in murmurs. Leo's face went white. His uncle, the VP, looked livid. Leo shot up from his chair like a cornered animal and started screaming at me. "Jake, you son of a bitch, you set me up." He lost control, snatching a binder off the table and hurling it at me. I instinctively ducked, but a colleague sitting next to him reflexively threw up a hand, deflecting it. The binder changed course, flying straight towards the window. Crack! It smashed right into Leo's spiky, aggressive cactus. The pot shattered, scattering dirt and cactus pieces all over the floor. The conference room fell dead silent. Everyone was stunned by the sudden turn of events. I stared at the mess on the floor, and only one thought echoed in my mind. One of its spines broke off. I jerked my head toward Nina. She had, at some point, returned her seat. She was looking down, calmly packing her things, as if the chaos had nothing to do with her. Her face still held that same gentle, harmless expression. But in that moment, a chill ran down my spine. 3. She said plan A was dead on arrival. Leo's uncle eventually managed to sweep the whole incident under the rug. An internal reprimand and a 3-month bonus suspension, and the matter was closed. Leo himself took a few days off, probably too embarrassed to show his face. The department was a lot quieter. My colleagues started looking at me with a newfound respect. They all thought the data report was my secret weapon. Only I knew the truth. If it hadn't been for Nina, I would have been the one humiliated in that conference room. I found Nina for a private chat, right in her usual spot by the fake plant. "That report, when did you prepare it?" "The day Leo gave me the raw data," she answered, cool as a cucumber. "How did you know he'd mess with it?" "When he walks, he has a habit of kicking at loose pebbles on the ground," she said. "And he refuses to drink the filtered water from the office cooler. Only the imported Evian he brings himself. A person who needs to rank something as basic as water doesn't care about rules." Her logic, I couldn't even argue with it. And the cactus? I couldn't help but ask. "I observed him for 3 days," Nina said. "Every time he's in a bad mood or planning something manipulative, he subconsciously fidgets with the spines on that cactus. That morning, I saw him fiddling with it for a long time, and he even broke off the longest spine. I guess he was going to pull something big and that it would get messy." I listened, completely floored. Was this an executive assistant? She sounded more like a criminal profiler for the FBI. I looked at the calm young woman in front of me and felt, for the first time, intellectually dominated. "Nina," I said with genuine sincerity, "thank you." She smiled. "I'm your assistant, Jake. It's my job to ensure your work goes smoothly." With that, she picked up her spray bottle and started misting the fake plant again. The sunlight caught her, making her seem almost unreal. After that incident, my attitude toward Nina shifted 180 degrees. I no longer saw her as just a normal assistant. Before making any big decisions, I would instinctively ask for her opinion. "Nina, what's your take on this client?" "Nina, does this project timeline seem reasonable to you?" She rarely gave a direct yes or no. Instead, she'd point out tiny details I had completely missed. For instance, the CEO of Client A had just gone through a messy divorce, and the company's equity was in flux, making partnership a risk. The project lead for Client B was left-handed but always signed important documents with his right hand, indicating he was extremely cautious and would be tough to negotiate with. Her insights were terrifyingly accurate. Relying on her details, I dodged several bullets and closed a few deals that had seemed impossible. My performance numbers shot through the roof, and the CEO praised me in company-wide meetings several times. I knew that at least half the credit belonged to Nina. Soon, a bigger opportunity presented itself. The company was bidding on a massive, industry-defining project with a contract worth millions. Nearly every department was salivating over it. I was eager to win, and I pushed my team through several all-nighters to create what I believed was the perfect proposal. Plan A. The day we finished it, I was on top of the world, convinced it was in the bag. I gave the proposal to Nina, asking her to check the formatting. She took it and flipped through it, page by page, meticulously. When she finished, she set it on the desk and was silent for a long time. I found it odd. "What is it? A formatting issue?" She shook her head, looking up at me with an unprecedented seriousness in her eyes. "Jake, Plan A won't work." "Won't work?" I was taken aback. "What do you mean?" The concept, the budget, the execution plan. I've covered everything. Plan A, she said, is dead on arrival. Her words stung. Nina, I know you're observant, but this is a professional project proposal, not about spotting a broken cactus spine. It was the first time I had ever explicitly pushed back against her. I had absolute faith in my plan A. Nina didn't argue. She just quietly returned to her desk. That night, everyone else in the department went home, but I stayed behind to polish the final details of Plan A. I noticed Nina hadn't left either. She was at her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I figured she was working on personal stuff and didn't pay it any mind. The next morning when I arrived at the office, Nina handed me a document. Jake, this is my Plan B. I opened it. It was a completely different approach. Unconventional, incredibly bold, but the logic was airtight, every piece interlocking perfectly. I was stunned as I read it. To be honest, it was more brilliant than my Plan A. But my pride was still a factor. Why should I use your plan? Nina looked me straight in the eye and said something that sent a chill down my spine. Because yesterday afternoon, the receptionist at our competitor, Innovatech, replaced the peppermint diffuser she's had on her desk for 3 years with a lemongrass one. What the actual? What did a receptionist changing her desk fragrance have to do with our multi-million-dollar project? I felt like she was deliberately testing the limits of my sanity. Nina, I said, enunciating every word, do you really think I'm crazy enough to believe that? She shook her head. It's your call, Jake. I'll just tell you one thing. The CEO of Innovatech is allergic to peppermint. And with that, she went to water her fake plant, leaving me standing there, holding Plan B, my world spinning. 4. The receptionist diffuser and the leaked secret in the end. I didn't use Nina's Plan B. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, but her reasoning was just too bizarre. I couldn't bring myself to throw away the sleepless nights my team and I had invested based on a receptionist's choice of air freshener. If word got out, my reputation would be shot. They'd say Jake Evans, the director, makes decisions based on his assistant's sixth sense, not data analysis. I couldn't afford that kind of humiliation. On the day of the pitch, I walked in with Plan A, full of confidence. The team from Innovatech was there too. Their project lead, Mark Vance, was an old rival of mine. We ran into each other in the hallway, and he greeted me with a smirk. Jake, long time no see. You're looking well. You too, Mark. You too, I replied. We shook hands, our grips firm, our eyes clashing like swords. The pitch began. We were scheduled third, Innovatech fourth. I took the stage and ran through my meticulously prepared presentation. Market analysis, creative concept, budget management, projected ROI. I laid it all out, feeling I had nailed it. The judges on the panel were nodding, and the client's representatives looked pleased. I felt a wave of relief. This deal was ours. As I walked off stage, I shot a triumphant glance at Mark. His expression was blank, but his eyes seemed to dart around nervously. Then it was Innovatech's turn. Mark walked to the podium and opened their presentation. The moment the first slide, the title slide, appeared on the screen, my smile froze. Project XXXX Proposal. The title was identical to ours. That wasn't a huge deal. It could be a coincidence. But as he clicked to the second slide, and then the third, sweat started beading on my forehead. Damn it. The core concept, the execution steps, even the marketing slogans were 70 to 80% identical to my Plan A. This wasn't just a case of similar ideas. This was someone stealing my clothes and wearing them as their own. The judges noticed it too. They began whispering amongst themselves. The client's representatives were frowning. I sat there, feeling the blood rush to my head. A mole. We had a mole in the company. After Mark finished, the room was filled with an awkward silence. During the Q&A, one of the judges looked from me to Mark and asked a pointed question. Mr. Evans, Mr. Vance, I won't comment on the quality of your proposals. I just want to know, which one of you copied the other? Mark immediately put on a victim face. Our proposal at Innovatech is the result of our team's hard work over the past 2 weeks. Every word is original. As for our competitor, I'd rather not comment. His words were a direct accusation. I almost slammed my fist on the table. That's bullshit. This plan is, I cut myself off. How could I prove it? We submitted our proposals around the same time. It was my word against his. It was a complete mess. And clients hate this kind of drama. Regardless if it was right or wrong, both our companies were probably out of the running for this project. I sat there, my mind a complete blank. It was over. Not only was the multi-million-dollar contract gone, but our company could be branded as plagiarists. My career as a director was finished. Just as I was sinking into despair, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Nina. Just one sentence. Jake, open the email I sent you 30 minutes ago. Connect to the projector and play the audio. A flicker of hope. I grabbed onto it like a lifeline. I immediately requested the moderator's permission to present new evidence. I walked back to the stage, connected my phone to the projector, and opened my email. There was only one attachment from Nina, an audio file. I hit play. A conversation between a man and a woman filled the room through the speakers. The man's voice was familiar. It was Mark Vance. The woman's was not. Mark, I sent you the proposal, the woman said. All of Jake's team's core concepts and their bottom-line budget numbers are in there. Mark's voice was laced with a smug satisfaction. Megan, you did great. Don't worry. You'll get the 20 grand I promised you. Every penny. Thanks, Mark. But about that receptionist job at your company. When can I start? Soon. Our current receptionist has some family issues and is leaving next month. It's all arranged. The recording wasn't long, but it was damning. The entire room was dead silent. Every eye was on Mark Vance. His face went from pale to a deep shade of purple. I turned and looked at him. It felt like I was looking at a dead man. And then it all clicked into place. The CEO of Innovatech is allergic to peppermint, so their receptionist would never use a peppermint-scented diffuser. If that position were to become vacant, a new person, unaware of the rule, might use one. Our mole, Megan, wanted that receptionist job at Innovatech. She sold my plan A as her audition. And Mark Vance, to keep her on the hook, lied and told her the position would be open next month. Nina had deduced this entire dirty chain of events from a single, insignificant detail, a change in fragrance. While I was patting myself on the back for a great proposal, she had already stripped our rival and our traitor down to their underwear. This wasn't just a sharp eye for detail. This was a completely different level of warfare. 5. The fully loaded plan, be the outcome of the pitch, was no longer in question. Innovatech was disqualified on the spot, and the client announced they would be pursuing legal action. Our company's reputation took a hit for having a mole, but because we produced the evidence and were transparent, the client gave us a second chance. They said if we could deliver a completely new, impressive proposal within 3 days, they would still consider us for the project. I returned to the office, where the department was in an uproar. The traitor, Megan, had been escorted out by security, her desk already cleared. Everyone was talking about what happened, a mix of anger and relief. If it hadn't been for that last-minute recording, our entire department would have gone down in flames. Everyone looked at me like I was some kind of wizard because I was the one who played the recording, only I knew that I was just the messenger. The real wizard was over by the window, changing the water for her fake plant. I walked into my office and closed the door. Nina followed me in, my mug in her hand, already refilled with hot water. I sank into my chair, still feeling a bit shaky. The recording. How'd you get it? Megan is a very vain person, Nina explained. Every day at lunch, she goes to the coffee shop downstairs and orders their most expensive single-origin pour-over, then posts a picture of it on her Instagram story. Her salary doesn't support that kind of spending. I knew she had another source of income. I looked into her recent call history and found frequent contact with a number registered to a business near Innovatech's offices. Then I checked her credit card statements and found a large charge, an upscale sushi restaurant. Dated the same night we finalized Plan A. That same evening, Mark Vance posted a picture from the exact same restaurant. So I guess they met that night to make the deal. As for the recording, Nina paused. I just added a mild laxative to the takeout order she had delivered for her afternoon tea yesterday. When a person is physically distressed, their focus and vigilance tend to drop. I then used an anonymous number, pretended to be someone from Innovatech confirming details, and she spilled everything. My hand, holding the mug, began to tremble. Damn, she wasn't just a profiler. She was a world-class spy. I looked at her innocent face and had one thought. I will never, ever get on this woman's bad side. So what now? I forced myself to focus. The client only gave us 3 days. We used Plan B. Nina said, her tone absolute. I gave a wry smile. Plan B is brilliant, but there's no way we can flesh it out into a submittable proposal in just 3 days. Jake, Nina looked at me. Take another look at the last page of Plan B. Confused, I opened the file on my computer. I scrolled straight to the end. The last page was an appendix. And in the appendix were pages and pages of dense data models, alternative strategies, risk assessments, and a detailed execution timeline broken down by the hour. She had even anticipated every potential problem that could arise after the project launch and laid out at least 3 different solutions for each. This wasn't a proposal. This was a complete, battle-ready operational plan, armed to the teeth. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded, then looked back at Nina. When did you do all this? I started the moment I knew the company was bidding for this project, she said. While you and the team were working on Plan A, I was building Plan B. I knew Plan A would have problems. Why? Because Plan A was too correct, Nina said. It met everyone's expectations, including our competitors. A perfect target is the easiest one to shoot down. Plan B doesn't play by the rules. I finally understood. In my eyes, Plan A was my masterpiece, my ace in the hole. In her eyes, it was just bait. A smokescreen to test the players on the board. She never expected it to succeed. The weapon she was truly honing was Plan B, hidden in the shadows. She had even factored in the mole's betrayal and the competitor's plagiarism. She used it all to clear the path for Plan B's grand entrance at the most opportune moment. 3 days. For anyone else, it was an impossible deadline. For her, it was just a matter of revealing what she had already prepared. 3 days later, I stood before the client again, this time with Nina's Plan B. When I finished presenting her unreasonable proposal, the client stood up and started clapping. They approved the project on the spot. After signing the contract, the CEO shook my hand, his eyes filled with admiration. Jake, to be honest, we weren't impressed with your Plan A or Innovatecus. They were too safe, too predictable. But this Plan B, it's exactly the kind of aggressive move we were looking for. I love it. I just smiled weakly, not knowing what to say. Aggressive was one word for it. This plan not only cured the client's indecisiveness, it had almost sent me straight to the ICU. 6. The man who wrote code. With the successful launch of the Plan B project, the entire department was busier than ever before. Overtime became the new normal. Except for Nina. She continued to clock out at 5 p.m. sharp every day, without fail. And no one complained. Everyone knew she was the brains of the operation. Even though she wasn't physically in the office, she had already prepared contingency plans for every project milestone and potential risk. The overtime drones, were more like cogs executing commands in a program she had already written. It sounded a bit pathetic, but damn, were we efficient. Halfway through the project, we hit a technical snag. We needed a specific algorithm to process massive amounts of data from our backend. But our department's engineers have been working on it for 3 days straight, and we're getting nowhere. With the project timeline at risk, everyone was on edge. I held multiple meetings, and the tech lead was practically tearing his hair out, but we were stuck. That night, it was another all-hands-on-deck overtime session. I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, so I went to the break room for coffee. I saw Nina was still there, which was a rare sight. She wasn't looking at project files. She was on a video call. As I walked past, I glanced at her screen. On the other end was a guy with black-rimmed glasses, a plaid shirt, and messy hair, with lines of code visible on a monitor behind him. A classic coder. I overheard Nina speaking in a soft, gentle tone I'd never heard before. Yeah, that's basically it. The data interface isn't compatible, and they've tried several different algorithms, but nothing's working. The man on the screen pushed his glasses up. That's a minor issue. I'll write you a new script. Give me half an hour. Okay, you're the best. Nina's voice was sweet enough to cause cavities. I froze in my tracks. Was this the same Nina? The cold-hearted mastermind who could out-scheme anyone? That flirtatious tone, that admiring gaze. My worldview was shattering all over again. I casually walked over to the water cooler, pretending I hadn't noticed anything. Nina saw me, but wasn't fazed. She just smiled. After she hung up, she sent a file to my inbox. Jake, here's the solution for the technical issue. I went back to my office and opened the email. It contained a compressed file. Inside was a brand new algorithm script, complete with detailed annotations. The logic was so clean and elegant, it was practically a work of art. I immediately forwarded it to the tech lead. 30 minutes later, he burst into my office, his face flushed with excitement. "Jake, it's solved. It's perfectly solved." He looked at me with the reverence of a disciple to a master. "Director, where on earth did you find this genius? This algorithm is a masterpiece." I clear my throat. "A friend." I couldn't very well tell him that the problem his entire team couldn't solve in 3 days was handled in 30 minutes by my assistant's boyfriend during a video chat. I called Nina into my office. "That was your boyfriend?" I couldn't resist the gossip. Nina nodded, a rare blush creeping on her cheeks. "Yes, he's in tech. Yeah, he runs his own small startup. He's a coder." A coder? A man who could write algorithms like poetry was no ordinary coder. I was suddenly curious about what kind of man could handle a prodigy like Nina. "What's he like?" Nina thought for a moment, and then she smiled. It was a completely different smile from her usual polite, distant one. This one was warm, genuine. "Oh, him? He's kind of a dork," she said. "He has no sense of direction, gets lost all the time. He has a major sweet tooth, can't walk past a bakery without stopping. And for all the amazing code he writes, he still needs me to reinstall his operating system when his computer crashes." As she spoke, her eyes sparkled. I suddenly understood. No matter how formidable a woman is, there's always a soft spot in her heart. A place reserved for the one person for whom she is willing to lower all her defenses. Nina's armor was her brilliant, calculating mind, and that coder was her one, willingly embraced vulnerability. I was genuinely happy for her. "That's great," I said. She smiled and didn't say more. As she was about to leave, she turned back. "By the way, Jake, for the department's team-building event at the end of the month, don't pick that new farm-to-table retreat in the Cascade foothills." "Why not?" I asked out of habit. My boyfriend said. Nina's voice was matter-of-fact. "Their server's firewall is built like a sieve." "Me?" "Right. I got it. What does a farm-to-table retreat's firewall have to do with our team-building event?" I had no idea, but I had learned the most important lesson of my career. Don't ask. Just listen to Nina. 7. The team builder and the sieve-like firewall at the end of the month. HR sent out a notice for department team-building events. They provided a few options, including that new luxurious farm-to-table retreat in the Cascade foothills. The place was all over social media lately. Gorgeous scenery, great amenities, and organic, locally sourced food. All the younger employees in my department were clamoring to go. Only I looked at the name and felt a knot in my stomach. Their server's firewall is built like a sieve. Nina's words echoed in my head. I made up an excuse about the retreat being too far and the traffic being a nightmare, and vetoed the option. We settled on a much more conventional choice, a large party rental house in the suburbs. The team was a little disappointed, but they didn't push it. On the day of the event, everyone had a great time. We sang karaoke, played cards, and broke out the board games. That evening, during the barbecue, we had a few beers, and everyone loosened up. Suddenly, someone scrolling on their phone yelled, "Holy crap, you guys got to see this." Everyone pulled out their phones. A local news alert had just popped up. Dozens hospitalized after food poisoning outbreak at Cascade Foothills Retreat. The accompanying photo showed flashing ambulance lights and paramedics loading people onto stretchers. It was chaotic. Beneath the photo, a smaller line of text read, "Preliminary investigations suggest the cause may be improper kitchen management, leading to a failure in the food storage systems and subsequent bacterial growth." Our entire department stared at the news, completely stunned. The same people who were just complaining about not going were now pale with shock. "Oh my God, we were so lucky we didn't go. The director is a genius. You literally saved our lives." My colleagues looked at me with pure admiration, like I was some kind of prophet. I just raised my beer, smiled awkwardly, and took none of the credit. All I could think was, failure in the food storage systems, my ass. That's exactly what happens when your firewall is a sieve and someone hacks in a mess with the temperature settings on your walk-in refrigerator. Nina's coder boyfriend probably wasn't just a regular programmer. The guy had to be a world-class hacker. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. If I hadn't listened to Nina, we would have been the headline. I quietly took another sip of beer. When we got back to work, I called Nina in my office. I decided some things needed to be said out loud. Nina, be honest with me. What exactly does your boyfriend do? Nina was organizing some files. She looked up at me, her expression perfectly innocent. He's a coder. Don't play dumb with me. I lower my voice. The retreat incident. Did you ask him to look into it? Nina shook her head. I didn't ask him to. He was trying to book their famous barbecue for us a few days ago and noticed their website had a vulnerability. So he took a look around. Is life really that simple for people on another level? What did he see? Their kitchen's security camera feeds, procurement records, employees' health certificates, and the real-time temperature monitoring for their cold storage, Nina said calmly. He said their data security was a complete joke, basically non-existent. A place that can't even guarantee food safety isn't worth visiting, no matter how good their barbecue is. I was silent. I felt less like I was talking to my assistant and more like I was reporting to a CIA agent. So you two. I chose my words carefully. Is this what you guys usually talk about? Not always, Nina said. Mostly we talk about what to have for dinner. Right. I'll just pretend I never asked. I waved my hand, dismissing her. She walked to the door, then paused. Oh, by the way, Jake. Yeah. That new manager in HR, Philip Reed. Stay away from him. What now? I felt my nerves going numb. He doesn't like cats. What kind of insane reason was that? Was it illegal to not like cats? Nina didn't elaborate. She just left. I sat in my chair and began to seriously contemplate whether I needed to sign up for a class on how to judge a person's character based on their feelings about felines. Otherwise, I felt like I was going to be left behind by the world. 8. The HR manager who didn't like cats. The new HR manager, Philip Reed, was a sharp, competent-looking man. He was in his mid-30s, with meticulously combed hair and gold-rimmed glasses, and he spoke in a constant stream of corporate jargon. He made some big changes right away. First, he reformed the attendance policy. 1 minute late was now counted as a half-day absence. Then he rolled out a new KPI system that quantified everyone's workload, with pay deductions for those who failed to meet their targets. The office was filled with grumbling. Behind his back, everyone called him Philip the Ripper. I didn't particularly like or dislike the guy. From a purely corporate perspective, his policies made sense. They were just impersonal. As for Nina's warning that he doesn't like cats, I completely dismissed it. I even thought it was the first time her prophecy had been off the mark. What did a person's feelings about animals have to do with their professional ability or character? Then one day, the refrigerator in the break room broke down. It was filled with lunches people had brought from home, yogurts, fruit. All of it was about to go bad. Facilities said they had to follow procedure, and a repairman wouldn't be there until the next day at the earliest. As everyone was stressing about their ruined lunches, Philip Reed stepped up. He waved his hand magnanimously. Don't worry about it. For anyone whose lunch was spoiled, I'm buying. We're all going to the restaurant downstairs on my tab. Then he turned to the office admin. And I'll cover the cost of a new fridge. Go buy one and have it delivered today. His gesture instantly won everyone over. People started praising him for being so generous and considerate. The same colleagues who had been calling him the Ripper now looked ashamed. I was there, and I had to admit Philip might be strict, but he seemed like a decent guy. It looked like Nina had finally gotten one wrong. That afternoon, Nina came by to drop off some documents. I casually mentioned the refrigerator incident and joked, see? Not liking cats doesn't stop someone from being a good person. Nina's expression didn't change. She just walked to the window and looked down at the street below. After a moment, she said, Jake, do you know about the stray cat that hangs out behind our building? The big orange one everyone calls Cheeto? I did. A lot of kind-hearted people in the office would leave food out for him. He was a friendly little guy. Yeah, what about him? Someone beat him up yesterday. Nina's voice was cold. His back right leg is broken. He's at the vet clinic now. I was shocked. Who would do something so horrible? I don't know, Nina said. I only know that yesterday afternoon, the only person who left through the back door during that time was Philip Reed. And the security camera for the back door just happened to be malfunctioning yesterday afternoon. My heart sank. One coincidence is just a coincidence. A series of them is a pattern. Also, Nina continued, Philip didn't pay for the new refrigerator himself. He expensed it through the office admin's budget. And that restaurant where he treated everyone. It's owned by his brother-in-law. He got at least a 30% kickback on that bill. No one knows about any of this, because they were all bought off with a new appliance and a free lunch. Nina turned away from the window and looked at me. Jake, do you think a man who would scheme against his own colleagues for a couple $100s in kickbacks would spend thousands on a new refrigerator just to be nice? Do you think a man who would secretly hurt a defenseless animal is really a gentleman just because he wears gold-rimmed glasses? He doesn't dislike cats because he's not an animal person. He dislikes them because cats, unlike people, can't be fooled by his fake persona. A cat can see the cruelty and coldness in his soul. So he hates them because they see the real him. After Nina finished, my office was completely silent. A chill started at my feet and shot straight up my spine. I looked out the window at the well-dressed HR manager, laughing and joking with colleagues below. All I could see now was a monstrous, hidden face behind those gold-rimmed glasses. Nina was right. I was wrong. You can tell everything you need to know about a person from the smallest things, like how they treat a cat that can't speak for itself. 9. A medical report after Philip Reed's true colors were revealed. I started consciously avoiding him at work. The man was too good an actor, charming on the surface, ruthless underneath. I was worried I'd end up with a knife in my back. Nina, however, acted as if nothing had changed. She treated Philip the same way she treated everyone else. Not friendly, but not distant either. But I noticed she had started collecting things. For instance, she'd request a digital copy of the meeting minutes for every meeting Philip led. She'd find a way to get a copy of every personnel change and hiring document he handled. I asked her what she was doing. Just keeping a record, she said. You never know when it might be useful. I had no idea what she was planning, but I had learned to trust her unconditionally. If she said keep a record, we kept a record. The peace didn't last long. Philip soon set his sights on me. It started with the termination of a longtime employee in my department. Her name was Sarah, and she had been with us for nearly 10 years, a diligent and dedicated worker. But she was getting older, and her health had been declining, affecting her energy levels. Philip seized on this, citing low work efficiency inconsistent with company development needs as grounds for her dismissal. To make matters worse, he was only offering the bare minimum severance package required by law. Sarah was devastated and came to my office, a woman in her late 40s, sobbing her heart out, saying she had given 10 years of her life to the company only to be thrown away like trash. It was heartbreaking. I went to confront Philip. He leaned back in his leather executive chair and gave me a smirk. Jake, I'm just following company policy. It's all there in black and white. If you have a problem with it, you can take it up with the CEO. He was using the CEO to shut me down. I knew our CEO, a man who only cared about spreadsheets and profit margins, wouldn't cross his HR manager for a single employee. The situation was at a stalemate. Sarah still came to work every day, but she just sat at her desk, sighing. The mood in the entire department turned bleak. I was out of options, so I went to Nina. Is there any way to fix this? She was reading a document and didn't even look up. Yes. What is it? Make him quit. She said it as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. I laughed bitterly. Easier said than done. He's the CEO's golden boy right now. Who could possibly make him quit? Nina finally looked up and handed me the file she was reading. Take a look at this, Jake. It was a medical report. The name on it was Philip Reed. I scanned through it. Most of his vitals were normal. It wasn't until I got to the doctor's recommendations on the last page that I saw it. It read, recommend cessation of smoking and alcohol consumption. Maintain regular sleep schedule. Additionally, patient presents with a severe allergic reaction to cat dander. Recommend avoiding all felines. Cat allergy. I was confused. How is that useful? Nina looked at me and slowly laid out her plan. By the time she finished, I was completely speechless. I stared at her calm face and thought one thing. Demon. This woman was an absolute demon. The next day, a cat suddenly appeared in the office. It was a stunningly beautiful ragdoll with bright blue eyes and fluffy white fur. The receptionist, a sweet young woman, had brought it in, claiming a friend was out of town and she was pet sitting. Her apartment didn't allow pets, so she had to sneak it into work. She carried the cat around, showing it off to everyone. The women in the office instantly melted. They all gathered around, petting the cat, cooing over how adorable it was. When Philip came out of his office and saw the scene, his face immediately changed. He stayed far away, pinching his nose and backing away. "Who brought a cat into the office? Don't you know pets are forbidden? Get out of here now," he snapped. The young receptionist looked like she was about to cry, clutching the cat, not knowing what to do. A few female colleagues spoke up for her. "Oh, come on, Philip. It's just for one day." "Yeah, he's so cute." Philip was so angry he started sputtering, pointing at them, unable to form words. Just then, the CEO stepped out of the elevator. With him was a guest, one of the company's most important investors, a man who was famously a cat fanatic. He supposedly owned more than a dozen purebred cats and was obsessed with them. The investor's eyes lit up the moment he saw the ragdoll. He walked over, took the cat from the receptionist, and started expertly stroking its fur. "Wow, what a beautiful cat. Perfect specimen." The CEO, seeing his guest was so pleased, grinned and walked over too. He then noticed Philip, who was standing there looking pale and angry. "Philip, what's wrong? You look terrible." Philip opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He couldn't very well announce in front of a cat-loving investor that he was allergic and demand they get rid of it. He forced a smile that was more painful than a grimace. "In nothing, sir. I was just admiring the cute cat." As he spoke, he let out an enormous, uncontrollable sneeze. Tears and snot streamed down his face. It was an absolutely humiliating sight. The investor, still holding the cat, just stared at him like he was an idiot. The CEO's brow began to furrow. 10. The cat in the last straw thanks to the receptionist's insistence. The ragdoll cat stayed in the office for the entire day. For the cat lovers, it was a day of pure joy. For Philip Reed, it was a day in hell. He barricaded himself in his office and didn't come out once. Even so, the microscopic cat dander floating in the air had him sneezing nonstop. Red welts broke out all over his skin. By the end of the day, his face was so swollen he was unrecognizable. His assistant had to help him leave early to go to the hospital. The entire company witnessed his pathetic retreat. The next day, the CEO called me into his office. He didn't mention the cat, nor did he mention Philip. He just asked me how Sarah's termination case was being handled. I explained the situation from beginning to end. I talked about Sarah's decade of service to the company and her recent health issues, expressing my hope that she could be treated with more compassion. I was sincere and to the point. The CEO listened, silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I understand. I'll handle this personally. Tell Sarah not to worry. This company doesn't abandon its loyal employees." I left his office with a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. That afternoon, 2 company-wide memos went out. The first was about Sarah. The company had decided to transfer her to a less demanding position in logistics, with no change to her salary, where she could work until her retirement. The second was about Philip Reed. Due to personal health reasons and controversial work methods, he was suspended effective immediately, pending an internal investigation. The memos sent a shockwave through the company. Everyone looked at me with a new level of awe. They assumed I had gone to the CEO and exposed Philip single-handedly taking down the Ripper. Once again, I took none of the credit. I found Nina as she was packing up to leave for the day. The ragdoll cat was gone. "Where's the cat?" "I sent him home," she said. "The receptionist. I asked her to do it." Nina cut me off. "The cat belongs to a friend of my boyfriend's. He's very gentle and very expensive." I nodded, understanding. Philippe's suspension. Why the sudden change of heart from the CEO? It was the one piece I couldn't figure out. Was one embarrassing moment in front of an investor enough to get him fired? It seemed too drastic. Nina smiled. "Jake, do you really think it's the last straw that breaks the camel's back?" She opened her laptop and showed me something. It was a folder containing all the dirt she had been collecting on Philip. Nepotism, putting relatives on the payroll, falsifying recruitment expenses to embezzle funds, harassing female interns, and a video of him abusing a cat. It had been filmed by another animal lover in his neighborhood with a hidden camera. The footage was grainy, but you could clearly see that the person kicking and beating a stray cat was Philip. The evidence was damning, piece by piece. "When did you give this to the CEO?" "Yesterday, during his meeting with the investor," Nina said. "I sent it as an anonymous email to both of their private inboxes." The investor is a true animal lover. He despises people who abuse animals. The moment he saw that video, our chances of getting his investment were pretty much zero. The CEO is a businessman. He doesn't care about Philip's character, but he cares deeply about the company's bottom line. When he realized Philip's presence was directly threatening a major funding opportunity, what choice did he have? As for the ragdoll, Nina paused. It wasn't the last straw. It was an overture, a grand, theatrical opening. It allowed the CEO to witness Philip's incompetence and foolishness firsthand, and it showed the investor our company's attitude. What truly kills the camel is never a single straw. It's the unbearable weight of its own sins, which it has been carrying all along. Nina finished speaking, closed her laptop, and slung her bag over her shoulder. I'm heading out, Jake. She gave me a little wave and, as always, disappeared right on time. I sat alone in the empty office, my mind reeling. I looked out at the city lights and, for the first time, began to ponder the difference between my life and Nina's. I worked hard every day, cautiously navigating office politics, trying to carve out a place for myself in this complex corporate world. But she never seemed to strive for anything. She just observed from a higher plane, seeing through all the hypocrisy, calculating every move. And then, with the simplest, most lethal push, all the problems would solve themselves. Perhaps that was the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. 11. The ticket with no seat. Philip Reed was finished. The company launched a formal investigation that unearthed all of his dirty laundry. In the end, he was fired for gross misconduct, with no severance. The day he left, he looked like a kicked dog, all his previous arrogance gone. The atmosphere in our department had never been better. Sarah was happily transferred to logistics, where she spent her days watering plants and feeding the office fish, essentially enjoying an early retirement. She treated our whole department to dinner, where she held my hand and tearfully thanked me over and over. Seeing her genuine smile made me feel a warmth deep inside. All thanks to Nina. Even if the process was terrifying, the project wrapped up smoothly. The client was so pleased that they not only paid the final invoice early, but also promised more collaboration in the future. As a reward, the company gave our department a hefty bonus and a 7-day group vacation. The destination, Maui, flights and hotel, all expenses paid. The news sent the department into a frenzy. Everyone was cheering, immediately debating what swimsuits to pack and which beaches to hit. Seeing their excited faces made me happy. All our hard work had paid off. I told Nina the good news, expecting her to be pleased, but she just gave a calm nod. Got it, Jake. You're not excited? I asked, surprised. A trip to Hawaii. It's amazing. Nina smiled faintly. I'm not a fan of crowded places. I figured she was just an introvert and didn't press it. Well, think of it as a chance to relax. The admin will book the tickets for everyone. Just enter your ID info. On the day of the trip, we all met at the airport, dragging our suitcases, buzzing with excitement. But when we went to check in, there was a problem. Everyone got their boarding pass, except for Nina. The airline agent checked her system for several minutes before looking up apologetically. I'm sorry, Mom. The system shows your ticket has been canceled. Canceled? Everyone was stunned. Nina frowned, pulled out her phone, and checked the booking confirmation. Then she showed the screen to me. It clearly listed the flight number, departure time, and seat number. But under the payment status, it read, payment failed. Order canceled. The admin who booked the tickets was on the verge of tears. That's impossible. I'm sure everyone's payment went through successfully. I checked it multiple times. I was baffled. What a time for a screw-up. I quickly asked the airline if there were any other flights to Maui. The agent checked again. All flights are fully booked for today. The next available flight isn't until tomorrow afternoon. Now we had a real problem. Our hotel reservations and airport transfer were all for today. If Nina was left behind, the entire schedule would be thrown into chaos. Everyone started talking at once. Some suggested we all change our flights to the next day and wait for Nina. Others argued that we'd lose a night at the hotel, which was a waste of money. As I looked at Nina's innocent face, a terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. This was too much of a coincidence. It felt engineered. I pulled Nina aside and lowered my voice. Be honest with me. Did you do this on purpose? Nina just looked at me, her expression unreadable. She didn't confirm or deny it. I was starting to get angry. Nina, this isn't funny. Everyone has been looking forward to this trip. Why would you do this? Nina was silent for a moment. Then she looked up at the massive departure board with its endlessly scrolling flight information. She said, Jake, do you remember what my boyfriend does for a living? I paused. He's a coder. Yes, she said. And besides coding, he has a side gig. Doing what? He's a stress tester for aviation security systems. My stomach dropped. What? What did he test? Nina turned back to look me in the eye and said, enunciating every word, the flight control system on the plane we were scheduled to take has a minuscule but fatal bug, one that can be triggered under extreme weather conditions. The bug can cause the autopilot system to fail if the plane encounters severe turbulence. And according to the latest meteorological charts, she continued, the second half of our flight path is set to pass through a rare supercell thunderstorm in about 2 hours. I stood in the noisy, crowded airport terminal and felt like I'd been plunged into ice water. My blood ran cold. A fatal bug, autopilot failure, a supercell thunderstorm. The words hammered against my skull. I looked at Nina's face, so calm it was almost eerie, and felt like I was watching a horror movie. This, a bug like that, why didn't your boyfriend report it? My voice trembled. He did, Nina said. 3 days ago, he sent his test report under the highest level of encryption directly to the airline's head of security. Then why didn't they? Because fixing the bug would require grounding the entire fleet to perform a software upgrade. That would take at least a week. For the airline, that means millions, maybe tens of millions in losses. So, they decided to gamble. They gambled that the extreme weather wouldn't materialize. They gambled that the tiny bug would never be triggered. They were betting on probability. But we can't afford to make that bet. I understood. I completely understood. Nina never intended to go to Maui. It wasn't that she disliked crowds. She just wasn't willing to put her life in the hands of a bunch of gamblers. She canceled her own ticket to create a problem, to buy us time. She wasn't messing with us. She was saving us. All of us. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. What do we do now? We wait, Nina said. Wait for what? For the storm to hit. With that, she grabbed her suitcase, found a quiet corner to sit, and opened her laptop to work, as if none of this had anything to do with her. My colleagues were still arguing about the tickets. I walked over and clapped my hands to get their attention. All right, everyone listen up. I cleared my throat and spoke in a tone that left no room for argument. Here's the plan. We are all rebooking for tomorrow afternoon's flight. We're not going anywhere today. The company will cover a night at the airport hotel. The team stared at me, confused by my sudden decision. Someone started to object, but I shot them a look that silenced them immediately. That's an order, I said. My authority in the department was solid enough. Though they were all grumbling, they reluctantly went to change their tickets. We checked into the airport hotel. Everyone was restless, gathering in rooms to play cards or watch TV. But I was a wreck. I kept refreshing the news on my phone, checking weather reports. The minutes ticked by. At 4 p.m., the time our original flight was scheduled to enter the storm zone, my heart was in my throat. 4:15 p.m. My phone suddenly exploded with notifications from every news app one had. The headlines were terrifying. Breaking. Flight XX897 from Seattle to Maui has lost contact. Flight XX897 vanished from radar over the Pacific after reportedly encountering severe turbulence. 187 passengers and crew members are on board. Their status is unknown. I stared at the black text, the room spinning around me. XX897. That was our flight. In the room, my colleagues' phones started ringing one after another. A second later, the room erupted in screams and sobs. Everyone was paralyzed with fear. A few of the women huddled together, crying hysterically. One moment, they were complaining about a ruined vacation. The next, they were realizing they had just narrowly escaped death. It was a profound, indescribable terror. The entire hotel floor descended into chaos. I bolted out of my room, searching frantically for Nina. I found her in the hotel's cafe. She was sitting alone, quietly sipping a coffee and looking out the window. Her laptop was open in front of her. On the screen wasn't a work document, but a real-time global air traffic map. In the middle of a deep red blotch indicating the supercell thunderstorm, the little green representing flight XX-897 was gone. It had vanished forever. I sat down across from her, unable to speak. She looked up at me and pushed a glass of lemonade, which she had already ordered, toward me. "Drink this, Jake. It'll help with the shock." I grabbed the glass and downed it in one go. The cold liquid did nothing to extinguish the fire in my chest. You still here. You knew, didn't you? Knew what? That they were going to crash. Nina shook her head. I didn't know. I didn't know for sure if the plane would go down. I only knew there was a risk. My boyfriend can test for a system's bugs, and he can predict extreme weather. But the one thing he can't calculate is human nature. He can't predict what choices people in power will make when faced with a decision between profit and human life. I wasn't betting against the weather. I was betting that they would always choose profit, because greed is the one bug in the human condition that you never need to test for. It's a certainty. She took a delicate sip of her coffee. Outside the window, the sky was growing dark. I looked at her calm profile and suddenly remembered the way she watered that fake plant every morning. I used to think it was some bizarre ritual. Now I understood. The plant was fake. The water was for show. It was all just an action. An action to remind herself, before starting another day in a world full of lies and calculations, to remain perfectly and absolutely clear-headed. She wasn't watching the plant, or the weather, or the code. She was watching people, the most complex and the simplest thing in the world. I looked at her and said, with all the sincerity I possessed, "Nina, thank you. Thank you for seeing the things none of us could. And thank you for saving all of our lives."